Hello friends and welcome back. Today we're going to do something really exciting. I am so hyped because I'm going to make a little 1790s, a little 1990s. I'm going to be using this Laughing Moon 133 pattern for the chemise dress to make a chemise dress, or a chemise à la Reine as it is sometimes known if you are going to be a little bit snobby about it. But this pattern is not exactly how I want it, so I'm going to try kind of severely altering this pattern, which I don't usually do, so it's going to be a learning experience for me. But I'm very excited about it because I found some very, very special fabric to use. I was in Los Angeles with my friend Hannah, and we were walking through Michael Levine, and I stopped and had a look because I found this. This is gauze. This is like 90s hoodie gauze. Like, it's legit gauze. I could not believe that I found a gauze fabric that was this lightweight in that particular pattern. And they had a ton of them. Like, they had full on Cher from Clueless. They had Mean Girls for sure. Like, they had tons of them, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Should I do it? And Hannah was like, yeah, you should do it. I am still in the throes of trying to figure out how I'm going to do that. I do have a pattern. I have a Laughing Moon pattern, which looks like I could probably just use that straight up. It has a gathered back. I think I have to check it out, and I want to find out about its like entry, like how you get into that gown. So I need to look at that pattern. I'm also looking at some tutorials online to figure out if I can maybe do a fitted back one, because I think that's probably slightly more flattering, but maybe not. And I don't know if I'm going to do a flounce on it, like it's really like a ruffle in the front. So there's some to have them and some don't. So I'm gonna maybe try both. I don't know, I've also never worked with gauze before, so this is like an entirely huge experiment. Starting with, how do I wash this? So I've gotten some advice from the internet that says to use some vinegar when I wash it because it'll help it become color fast. And my washing machine is currently full, so of course I started this vlog right when I can't actually do the thing I want to do. But I did want to cut off a sample of this, try sewing with it a little bit on my sewing machine, also try ironing it and try spray starching it to see what ironing does to it. Does it take out the texture? I don't actually mind if it takes out the texture. It's not really that textured anyway, so I'm not that worried about it. But I wanna see what it's like to sew with and that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna hack off a little piece and give that a go right now. I'm also going to, at some point during this vlog, deal with this now playing list because we're getting, you know, to the like more complete area of this because I've done these two things. So I want to figure out if this is really the stuff that I want to work on still, so I need to think about this a little bit. So over the next week, which is about how long these vlogs are recorded over, we will cover what's going to happen here. Okay, so I have ironed it, and it doesn't take out any known texture on this. It feels the same. Just got any wrinkles out, and I have sewn 2 lines of stitching on it, and my machine loves this. Now what I'm going to do is unpick some stitches to see how much like tolerance this thing has for getting unpicked. That helps me know like how the margin of error I have that I can use when sewing on this stuff. These are all just things I do when I first get a new material that I've never sewn with before, just to like run it through its paces and see like how careful I need to be. Okay, so it does leave a mark. You can see that line right there when you unpick it. Some of this was picked delicately, like stitch by stitch, and some of it I like pulled it apart a little bit and then ripped a couple stitches and then pulled apart. And it pretty much acted the same way, like I got the same results, although I think the line is a little bit thicker over here where I was pulling more. So it is a delicate unpick, so I have to keep that in mind. So now we know. Pro tip, if you haven't heard this before, sew your fabric into a Mobius strip if you have, you know, more than a yard or two, and it'll help it keep it from bunching. You could technically do it with your bed sheets too, but that's a little overkill. So it helps keep it from bunching. I learned this from Hoppin' Bobbin, who has been on this channel before. She learned it from somewhere else, so we're all just passing the knowledge down. But I've heard from many people about this, and it totally works. So I'm going to zigzag the edges and then Mobius strip this thing, get it ready to go in the wash, and I am going to put a couple of tablespoons full of white vinegar in the wash just to keep the color fastness and get it set. This is a gown I think I'm probably going to want to wash because I can see if it's a grunge situation, then I'm going to get grungy in it because I like sitting on grass and stuff. So it's best if we can Noel-proof this gown. Okay, this is actually what happened. This is the original, so this is what it looked like at the beginning, and then this is what happened when it got washed. It got crinkled up. And I want it to be more like this. So I'm going to go ahead and iron this out so that I will have completely flat material again, and then we will go ahead and work on this dress. Okay, so we have ironed fabric, and we have our pattern found. That was a quest. So I have actually spent the last couple of days watching videos, lots and lots of videos about this dress. People have made a ton of chemise dresses, chemises all around, robe on chemises, whatever you want to call these dresses. Lots of people have made them, and lots of people have made videos about them, so I've been watching their videos to see how they're doing it. A couple of people have definitely made this pattern before, but done some alterations. Some other people have done different alterations with how they just draped the pattern on themselves kind of thing, so I think I might try to do some of those things but still vaguely follow the pattern because I'm a pattern girl at heart. This is actually going to be, I want this dress very badly because I love it and it's a grunge, but it is actually just a wearable mock-up because I do want to make a black one of these at some point. I love black chemise dresses. I think they're awesome, and I am intending on making one of those later. This one is the one for now, and I'm very excited about getting my little bit of 90s back into my life. So not that my 90s are very far out of my life. I wear hoodies that look exactly like this every day. All right, I'm gonna go look at this, look at the pattern. If the pattern looks good, I'm gonna cut the pattern out so that I can then make at least an interior lining mock-up to see if that is gonna, how that fits me and if there's any adjustments I need to do and stuff like that. Then I'm gonna make the interior lining out of linen, I think. Okay, so we have a little bit of an issue because my bust and waist measurements don't like line up with each other. So my waist is 40, it is 40 without stays on, and it is 40 with stays on. My bust measurement is actually like 45, so it's actually between these two. But I'm gonna cut this 26, and then I might just have to grade my pattern down a little bit when it comes towards the bust area. I'm just gonna go ahead and make a mock-up of the lining here in the 26 because I feel like that's going to be the closest thing. I kind of always go for the bigger measurement. Usually I'm pretty close, like I'm only off by basically one size. So that's not that big of a deal, and I can pinch and tuck some of that out. Okay, so for my own edification, I have actually marked the pieces that I think I need based on what I want to do. I actually don't know if I'm going to take the full gathers bodice side or if I'm going to take the light gathers side with the full gathers bodice front. I'm not sure, positive yet. The back, you'll notice that I don't actually have one marked for the back, and that's because what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take the lining back and I'm going to lay a big piece of fabric over it, and then I'm going to pleat it down because I want a pleated back and not a gathered back. So I need to look at how this all will go together before I figure out how I'm going to do that, but I've seen a couple people do it. It doesn't look that complicated, so that's the first modification that I'm going to do to this. Okay, so we have a neat pile done of cut up paper. And we have the 3 pieces that comprise the lining out, which is piece 1, 4, and 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and like actually iron these out a little bit so that they're completely flat. Then I will remove the ironing pad and I will take a piece of muslin and I'm going to cut out these shapes and sew them together so that we have a little mock-up of the lining, which is the only part that needs to be fitted. Okay, so welcome to the weirdest camera angle I've ever had, where you can see my camera, but this is the way I can have 2 hands. Okay, so I cut a 26, which should have been a 40-inch waist. I just checked my waist measurement here. It is 40 inches still. And yet here we have all of this extra. Do you see how much extra is in this? Like, this is not a fitted bodice like it should be for a 40-inch waist. I have no idea what's happening. I used the right piece. I have no idea. Like, I was like, oh, did I use the one that's supposed to be pleated down to get to that? Like, I would have to, yeah. Actually, the top part should have been the top, the like least right, and it's actually kind of more close. So I don't really know what to do here other than I'm gonna have to pinch out a bunch and try it back on and see how that works. It's also like there's a lot going on in the armpit area, like that this is too much. So I'm very like, oh, this is not what I had expected it to be. I also hate, and I would like to say hate with a passion, the fact that this thing closes in the back. Like, that is the most annoying thing. So I'm trying to figure out if I can flap that around to close in the front, because I don't want to deal with that. So that might be the first thing I do, is slice this open, because I can take out 5 inches, 5/8 of an inch here on each side for sure. And that might help a lot, actually. And then seal up the back so that this thing closes in the front, because I'm not feeling good about that. Welcome back to this weird camera angle. Okay, so we've gotten it significantly better. I have switched it to a front closer, which is historically accurate also. It might mean that I need to use a little boning in here, which I might have had to use anyway, so we don't know how that's gonna go just yet. I do like this neckline. I feel like the shoulders are fitting pretty well. Probably this is gonna get taken in a little bit, so that will help. This area right here is a little poochy, so I might pinch a little bit of that out. And I'm gonna remake essentially the pattern for the front part here, because I had to pinch out what is essentially like 1 inch and something here and at least 1 inch at the top there. So on both sides, so I've pinched out. I'm essentially redrafting parts of this pattern, but not the entire thing to fit me, which I've not really had to do before, but I feel like I've achieved like a fairly snug fit without it being tight or weird or whatever. The back, I feel like looks pretty good as well, like it fits the way I want to. Maybe that little area right here is a little bubbly, I think. So, but that is something that happens, and like the sleeves will also adjust for that. Okay, what I'm trying to show you here is that I took the edge, this edge right here, of the shoulder strap in a little bit, because I had to do that on almost all the things that the 18th century stuff I've had so far, and that seemed to stop the bubbling problem. So I'm just gonna cut the strap slightly differently. I'm gonna remake the pattern essentially so that it includes that kind of curvature, because I know that my arm needs that. Okay, I have a hunk of linen chopped off. It's only about half a yard, so that's great. This is for the lining. That's gonna go into the wash just now. Thought we should like mark off some of the stuff we've done. We've done some research, cut up pattern paper, cut the mock-up, we sewed the mock-up. We're on this step right now. I want to start this segment of the video with, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have always sort of like transferred marks in like a somewhat hacky way. Like, I wing it. It's always been fine. You could probably wing it too. There are like mathematical ways to like measure the distance that you took out and like exactly move that onto. Yeah. So that's what's happening. I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna show you how I'm doing it. Please don't yell at me in the comments. If you do, I'm gonna delete your comment. Love you. Okay, so this is where I took out a bunch I took out this much actually, in the arm seam in the back. So I started this by just drawing on the line that I sewed. You'll be able to see it because there'll be hole marks and stuff too, but it's nice to have an actual line there. So I start by doing that. And then I tear this whole thing apart, like the whole thing, because I'm gonna want these pieces individually and that piece individually flat again. It's really hard to do this if you don't tear your mock-up apart, so that's what's happening. While I'm working on this stuff, I am listening to Adam Savage read his book, memoir, some whatever, Every Tool is a Hammer. I highly recommend this. This is about his journey as a maker. He talks a lot about how he does shop setup. He has a whole thing on like random glue and stuff, so like some of it's not really pertaining to exactly what we do, but in a large way it actually very much, I mean, he's talking about being a maker and that's what we are, so it's the same stuff, just applied for him to model making for the movie industry, but like, and Mythbusters and stuff, but like the way he talks about setting up his shop is really interesting, and it is very much how we set up our craft spaces. He talks about costume making and prop making and all the things that we do also in this book, so I do highly recommend it. I mean, I highly recommend watching Adam Savage's YouTube channel also. He builds a lot of stuff and it's fun to watch makers make stuff, so if you need something else to watch, Adam's great. Okay, I've got these two pieces off. I really only need one of each. The other one I just need to measure like how much I pleated out, essentially. I just need one to be actually physical. And I only need this one guy here. And actually what I'm going to do is measure, like sort of straighten this line out a little bit and then measure 5/8 and just cut it so that it's the new piece, and then I'm going to essentially trace that. So this one is super easy. And this one I'm going to measure the two sides, both the top and the bottom, because it's a triangle really, and see if they're the same on both sides. If they're not, I'll amortize whatever that pinch out is and get this pinched out like that. And then honestly, I'm gonna lay it on top of this guy and get this pinched to the same place, fold it because it's just paper, right, so that it's pinched out in the same way, and then trace that. This is how I'm doing this. I'm sure there are ways to mathematically like make this perfect. I'm not that worried about it. I'll just re-smooth everything. Everything I know about sewing is that like, it'll be fine. I did want to say, I'm pressing these. I am not ironing them. So there's a difference between pressing and ironing. Pressing is literally exactly what it sounds like. You pick the iron up and you press it, and then you press it and you press it. Ironing is where you like move the iron on the surface. And the thing about doing that here is that could stretch this out. Slash, this already might be stretched out a little bit from being sewn. And what I actually want to do is press it with some steam to get it like shrunk back up to the right size. So there are times in which either thing is necessary. This is the time for pressing. You don't want to like stretch the fabric out. So be wary of which thing you're doing and when. Okay, I tried a bunch of angles. This is the one I like. So I'm just basically cutting off a little bit there, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna go ahead and trim this. And then what I'm gonna do is outline on pattern paper the literal rest of it. So like all of like this part here. And then when I get to the top line, I'll just put this on, match it all up, and then make sure to use this line. So then I'll have a new pattern piece that will work for me, and I'll talk to you about how I mark that. I cannot believe this happened, but I measured this bottom part and this top part on this and the other piece, and they are identical measurements. So I pinched out the exact same amount on both sides, like weirdly exactly the same amount. I'm just like, wow, I didn't know that was possible. So I'm going to pinch that same amount out on this just by laying this over it until it matches. And then I will redraw this paper just by tracing it. Okay, so I folded this just right on top of this. It took me like 2 seconds. I measured this. It was the right measurement. I measured this. It was the right measurement. So I feel like we're good to go. Just going to redraw this on another piece of pattern paper for both of them. I'm also going to make a note just on this paper, because I don't need to do that, that this is now going to be on the fold, because I've decided that this is now a front closing situation. I checked with all the experts I know and they said front closing is just fine. So that's what's going to happen. Okay, here we are. This has been redrawn. I have moved all the marks. I have put a grain line on, and I have copied everything from the paper, including that I cut this at a size 26, but I modified it on this date. And it said cut 1 on fold, so I'm saying cut 2 of lining, because that is now what's going to happen. Because this is not going to be one big piece, it's going to be 2 smaller pieces. So I think that's where we're at with this, and I'm going to cut this one out, and I'm going to do the shoulder strap, and then we will have a pattern ready, and we have linen to cut. Hello! I am freshly showered and clean, and I have a couple hours that I can sew today, so I thought I would come in here and get the lining section done. I realized that I made a mistake, and it was kind of dumb. So I'm going to show you what happened and how I'm going to fix it. Okay, so when I was looking at this front piece, when I was doing the front closure, I was overlapping the pieces at 5/8 of an inch. But really what ends up happening is these pieces are both going to get turned under 5/8 of an inch. So I really only accounted for 1 of the 5/8 of an inches. That was stupid. So here we are, caught with not knowing what to do, because even when I made this pattern, it still didn't account for that. So how I'm going to fix this, inherently my little perfectionist brain wants me to recut this entire pattern piece, which is heckin' wasteful, so I'm not actually going to do that. What I'm actually going to do is go ahead and cut out like 1 inch, essentially a facing that I'm going to sew onto this at 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to lose 4/8 back out and essentially get 6/8 on each side back. Is that right? Yes. So it's gonna be fine because that 6/8 of an inch is actually gonna be tucked under, and it'll actually give me just a tiny bit more here, which is fine because of how this dress works. So I'm going to essentially use a facing to fix this problem because it's slightly too short. And then I'm also going to add what is really 3/8 of an inch, because that's actually how much I need, onto this. So when I cut 2, I'll get 6/8 of an inch back to this pattern piece, so that next time I use it, it will be the proper size. I'm going to go ahead and power through getting the lining sewn, because you guys have seen me sew the mock-up, so it's the same process. I'm just going to sew some stuff here, here, and here, and call that good. So that's where I'll be in just a second. I forgot to mention that I am going to do my traditional thing of zigzagging all of the edges of this, just because I don't want this to fray, and it's linen, and I feel better safe than sorry. Okay, so we have a lining here who's all done. You can see the little placket I put on here. It will be pushed to the inside. When I build this thing, I'm going to have this be the me facing part of it, so all the seams will be on the inside, of course. I just read through the rest of the instructions and I think I grapple what to do, except that I switched around the opening, so I have to do a little bit of adjusting on which things I do how. But other than that, I think I get it. I also fixed this guy by adding another 3/8 of an inch to it for next time Noelle, so that I'm not like, what did I do last time? So yeah, I think this is in a good spot. I can go over here and cross yet another thing off my list. I think Chris and I were gonna watch Dune, the new one, tonight because it's on HBO. Okay, so we're back and it is a new day, so that's great. I have a couple hours to sew. It's really late at night actually. Let's talk about the myriad of problems that we have coming up and facing us and how we're going to overcome them. The first problem, I guess it's not really a problem, it's just like a situation. So this pattern is made for a fully gathered front and fully gathered back that are made as one unit with a back close, and they are basically gathered up. You make the whole outside and then you stick the lining in, gather everything to the lining, sew it down and flip it inside out. Okay, so there's that. So I obviously can't do that. First of all, I changed the back opening to front. That's not actually a big a deal in the scope of what I just said. But because I want to do a fitted back, which just means essentially you pleat fabric down to the back, kind of like the back of a like 18th century gown. So you do that instead of just gathering up the back. And so I would like to do that. I think it makes for a more there's a word, but it's a more something gown. I would like that back, which means I cannot do the method that they're suggesting because I need to place just a basic shape onto the back of the lining that I have here and then pleat to that lining and sew it to the lining. Essentially what's going to happen, I think, is that I'm going to take each piece and using the same method that I did with the jacket that I just made, the Amalia jacket, basically just tuck under the raw edges and sew the piece down manually to the dress in the lining. So the lining becomes the structure of the dress and the floofy outer bit isn't separate. So there's another type of this same dress, the Robe Chamise, where you basically just make a giant tube of fabric and then you put drawstring channels in and you drawstring it to yourself and then add some sleeves and move on with your life. That is not what we're doing here. There's tons of people who have tutorials on that method and it's a totally different way to make this dress. I would like it to be a little bit more structured, so that's why I chose this method. Also, there's a pattern for this, although the tube thing is like obvious, it's just a tube, like it's not that complicated. So also, I have exactly enough fabric to make this dress, but I didn't fully consider the concept that I would be like schmucking around with the back and not making it according to the pattern. Also, you guys saw me adjust the size of this lining, which means the pattern pieces that I have are a little off from what this shape is now. Lastly, I don't usually wing it. Like, this is my first time just like, let's wing it. So we're gonna see how it goes. I'm totally ready for this. I feel like as a sewist, after 5 years of sewing, I feel like it's time for me to go ahead and wing it. There are things I've winged before, like I winged the bodice of Iron Man a lot and stuff like that, but this is the first time that I'm just like, I don't care, let's just do this. So I'm just gonna do it, essentially. So I think what I'm gonna do to solve the problem of how much fabric I have is I'm going to figure out, they have these pattern pieces for the skirt, and I'm like, the skirts are just rectangles and they're rectangles that are the width of your fabric. So I'm like, can I just not deal with those rectangles? Can I just find out how long they are and just cut strips of fabric that length and then sew them together so that I have a skirt, and then whatever fabric I have left over is what I have left over to do the bodice with? I think that's kind of a better plan. So I'm going to start with that mentality. I'm going to cut the front, the side, and the strap pieces out first, and then whatever I have left over is how I can deal with the back. So that's what my plan is. I'm hype about this plan. I think it's a good plan. I think it's gonna work. I think my construction is completely period, so I'm not worried about that. But like, honestly, I have grunge fabric. Like, nobody can ride me about period accuracy anyway. So I think it's gonna be fine. I'm just like, oh, okay, I have to actually do this now. So I've spent a couple days like not doing that. So it's time to get going. So I think the first thing that I'm going to do is get the skirt parts taken off of this fabric load so that I can spread out the fabric and figure out what I have left over for the bodice, then figure out how that does. There's also like, oh, sleeves. I have to cut sleeves out, and then there's like ruffles that I don't know if I want. slash have fabric for. You know, every time you get a pattern, they're like, oh, you need 3 yards. And you're like, I needed 2¼ yards. Like, what are you talking about? So I'm hoping that's a thing that's gonna happen here. We're gonna see. Okay, fortunately, they say on here that the front panel is 46 by 45. They actually say the same thing here about the back panel, so I don't have to take these back together. The width of this is about the width of my fabric. I mean, my fabric's a little bit wider, but it's also gauze, so it's like stretchy and squishy, so like whatever. I'm just cutting it selvage to selvage, that pile right there. And so I'm just gonna cut, I need 2 back panels and 1 front panel. They're all identical unless I put a train on it, which I'm not going to. So I need 3 panels that are the width of my fabric and 46 inches long. I just measured me from like my under bust point to the floor, and that was 45 inches. So this is going to be just fine. Okay, I cut 3 panels because you're supposed to, that are selvage to selvage. So that's great because it means I can just seam it and not have to like stress about how I'm going to finish that seam. I'm intrigued by this red line down the inside of the seam, but weirdly, I don't think it's going to show once it's seamed in. Does that show? I don't know. I don't know if I care. I am going to seam these together, and then I will have the skirts ready for whenever the bodice is ready to accept them. That's the first thing I'm going to do, and that will help me get practice just working with this material because it's gauze and it's kind of crazy. I've never worked with it before. I was left with 3 yards and 10 inches left of my fabric, which I don't see why I shouldn't be able to get a bodice and some sleeves out of that, maybe even ruffles. That was fun. I'm sure you guys have figured out that this is like the single squidgiest fabric ever. They're not straight at all, but I was following lines, like, cause you know, there are lines all over this, so I just followed lines down, which was super helpful, although sometimes the line on the front did not necessarily line up to where I needed it to be on the back, so I did a little bit of extra futzing. Okay, we have a 100 and a lot inch, maybe like 30 or 40, I don't know, because this fabric is so squidgy. Anyway, very largely circumferenced skirt with seams that vaguely just disappear, which is nice. Okay, I've also done this where I've basically laid out each section that I need to do, because when we're talking about hand stitching a piece down, like that's not just like thing. So it's like, yeah, I need to sew the whole sides on because I'm going to hand stitch them to the gown, and that will take me a whole bunch of time. So I listed all the steps that I think I need to do here. Even though they are in the instructions, I'm probably going to sort of stop looking at the instructions too much, except I need to figure out like the waistband situation and how that all goes together. But like, I think it's just sew the waistband to the top and then sew that to the skirt. So I think it's no big deal. But I put all this in here because this lets me have more serotonin bursts every time I check something off. So I get to go ahead and check something off now. So that makes me excited. One day I'm going to start up a podcast called Procrastination Nation, and I'm going to talk to you about all the things that I do while I'm procrastinating sewing. Okay, I did a bunch of experimental pattern drafting, winging it. I feel like the most important thing is like these 2 lengths are the same length, and the same length as what the lining is now, because it actually has changed. So I made them sure that was the case. This is the same length as it should be for the back. That's good. That is not, because it gets gathered, and that's not. Who knows if this is all right or not, but we're gonna find out, and a lot of it's gathered, so it's probably fine. So I'm gonna cut this out and then cut the fabric out and hope to God this is okay. Okay, so we have that cut out and we are gonna go cut this. I have plenty of fabric, I think, so it's not gonna be a big deal. I was kind of worried about it, but I don't need to be. My strategy here is to cut out in like panels. This fabric is heckin' squishy. I'm not even trying for pattern matching in most cases. Like, I can't just deal with that level. I did it on the skirt, but so I am literally just gonna cut out like this panel full of stuff and then reset, because it gets weirdly squidgier as you go. So if I just keep close to the edge, I feel like I can handle small sections. So that's what's happening. Everything is cut out. I have the back laid down so I can figure out how much fabric I need to cut off so that I have enough fabric to complete the back. Very excited about that prospect. Coming over here to look at my situation. I have been literally dreaming about this back for quite a while, like actually having dreams about how I will do it. So I figured it out. So that's it, and I've done this. Okay, so now I need to sew these things together. I am contemplating my attachment methods here, so I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do with the back and then execute. Okay, so I checked this piece just to make sure it was going to take up all the way to the same pattern piece essentially, and it in fact does, so that's great. Now I'm just like looking at the back thinking, okay, we gotta pleat this, and it's just this space right here because we have the same straps. Everything else is gonna work out just fine. So I'm gonna cut off my fabric at just longer than this because you don't know what's gonna happen here and things might twist, and yeah, so I'm just going to give myself a little room. I'm going to cut myself off some of this fabric, and then I'm going to essentially pin it down and start just faking it. Okay, so this right here is the halfway point. So I've done 2 pleats on the other side, but this is essentially what it looks like pleated up in the back, which I think looks pretty cool. I feel like it's starting to brrr on this side, so I might have to unpin them all from the back and just pin them to themselves and then lift the whole thing up a little bit and I'll have to make some decisions about that when I can lay it flat, but I feel good about all the spacing and stuff, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave these pins pinned like this and then try to mimic this pattern going the other direction. Okay, here is the chaos that is the back pleated. It's a lot. I've been looking at pictures of pleated backs, and a lot of them are straight pleated like this, and some of them are like arc pleated a little bit, and I like the way that looks better, but I don't know how that looks with this sort of like straight line situation. I think I need to like oops up some of this, like I think I need to take, and this also goes like right to the edge there of the pattern piece, so I might take out the last pleat and just have that be like how it connects. I might take out 2 of the last pleats and then arc some. I'm not sure what I want to do yet, so I'm gonna sit here and ponder this. Okay, I have no idea if you guys can even really see a difference, but this side is pleated with like, it goes from smaller to wider, like the pleats get bigger and they kind of curve there, and then this is like the regular side. I do like this better, so I think I'm gonna go with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that to the side, hopefully getting it anything like that. And then what I'm going to do is iron it all down. I'm going to baste it all down. I do have a seam allowance, so I can like tuck it under in here, but also this guy has to be pressed up. Did I think of doing that before I did all this? No, I didn't. Genius move, Noelle. Okay, so cool. What I might do is take out, like unpin it, keep the pleats pinned, but unpin it from the back, flip the seam allowance in, same with up here, and then cut a better seam allowance on these, stitch it all down, stitch all the rows down. I could do this on the machine, like there's no reason I couldn't, but it's fiddly and it will allow me to fiddle with it even more if I do it by hand, so I think I'm going to do it by hand, but I'm gonna like press each pleat down so it's as nice as it can be before I get going. So we'll see how this turns out. Okay, we are swooping in for the flyover. Okay, so what's actually happened is I've ironed under the sides, the sky, and the top so that I can stitch all that down by hand. The bottom is merely the same. It will get basted down before I start because it will then go into the waistband. So I think my next step is to go ahead and like deal with the situation and sew it all down. So I'll be back when that's done because I feel like that's an epic journey. And we are done. 4.5 hours later of stitching. It's all stitched down and attached to the back. So now I'm gonna go ice my hands and then work on the rest of the bodice tomorrow. I'm here tonight to put together some of the bodice. I think what I can do, because this mannequin here is a little bit of a good representation of it, is that there's a front piece, a side piece, and a strap, and I think I can put this piece all together, no problem. And again with this piece, and then I think I'm gonna have to maybe hand stitch on a bunch of this. But there's some parts of this that need to have gathering threads run in them. All the pieces need to be zigzagged and then stitched together. So that is my mission for tonight. This project is going slower than I would love it to, but probably only for me and not for you guys. I've taken several days off several times in the middle of this project so far, so we had Halloween last night and it was fun. We got 0 trick-or-treaters, so I have all this candy, which is not a great thing to have around my house. But we had a great time. We watched a bunch of movies. Friday we went to Pumpkin Patch, got a bunch of pumpkins. I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm gonna run some zigzags around the edge of these, maybe some gathering stitches, and stitch these together and try to get at least that part done tonight and see if we can get this to a state in which I can then attach it to the bodice. Because then it's like assemble the waistband, put the skirt on the waistband and the waistband on the dress, and then move on with my life? Question mark? I don't know. It's not, that sounds easy. I don't think it's gonna be that easy. There's also like the belt situation, the tying thing that goes around you, sash, ribbon. belt, whatever. That needs to happen. I still haven't figured out what my hat would be like for this, were I to have a hat. I kind of was trying to figure out how to put like, I'm like, can I put a beanie on a hedgehog? And my friends were like, no. And I'm like, I want like a Pearl Jam beanie for this. I could definitely put it on like one of those pompadour thing and just put a beanie on the top. That would be absolutely ridiculous. But I don't really want to have to do my hair like that, and I don't have that wig, so I have a hedgehog. That's what's going on here. So I am trying to think about a hat situation, although that will be a completely different situation in a movie and another video. Hi, these are mini movies. So yeah, I'm gonna go run through a bunch of tedious sewing stuff that you probably don't need to watch. I'm just making zigzags and sewing straight lines. I'll be right back with all that. Remember like 2 seconds ago when I said like, oh, it seems too easy? It's because I forgot about sleeves. Okay, I have one side completely done. I had to gather this top here and then run gathering threads here and here, which I will sort out the gathering part when I put it onto the lining. I'm in the middle of another one, but I wanted to show you guys this really cool thing. Totally not sponsored. So my Janome M7 has this cool feature where if you go over here, it has like preset gathering thread, jibby. So like it adjusts the tension and adjusts all this stuff, just like everything's fine for gathering. I love this machine. Okay, so we have this guy done also. So I guess I'm gonna start pinning this together. I think I'm gonna go around and take down the seam allowances so that it's the same, like it's where it's supposed to be. Like this is tucked under kind of thing. Okay, I've got one half of it like sort of pleated on here. I think a lot of it will get done a little bit better when I'm stitching it down, but it vaguely looks like this. I'm trying to get you some better lighting. So that's cool. It's less like stuff here pleated. There's less material here than I sort of anticipated, which is shocking to me, surprising. I guess that's what I mean by less than I anticipated. There's also this weird like section here that I don't really know what to do with. So I'm just have to like futz with it while I stitch everything down and try to make this like more pleaty, I guess. And this was like, there's like way too much fabric here. I don't know what happened, so anyway, it's all gonna get hand stitched down, so I think that's actually kind of a better plan. But it's looking good. I'm just gonna do it to the other side and then start stitching it down. we have a front and it's been pinned to high hell. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've already actually gone around all the back parts and sewed this down. So I'm going to go around and sew the rest of it down so that it's in. Some parts of the side here are just like way longer than what is the lining. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that off. And then I will probably put a couple tacking stitches in here where I have these pins because I feel like some of these don't want to lay the way I want them to, so I'm going to force them to. Okay, we are done. Everything is sewn / tacked down. I am very happy with the way it looks. I like the amount of like ruffling and gathering that's happening here. Everything's like sort of tacked in place so it's not going to come off or up or I have to change this or futz with it every time, which is great because on striped fabric I really wouldn't want to do that. Like, ugh, the nightmare. Anyway, so this is all ready to go. Okay, so we did this, we did this, we did this. Nope, okay. So we still have waistband, sleeves, skirt, hemming, ruffles to go, plus also a sash situation, so I should put that on here. So there it is, and I do have a plan for that. I don't know if it's gonna work out, I don't know if it's gonna look good, but I'm gonna give it a go. So anyway, this vlog is taking forever because I keep sewing on this for, you know, 2 or 3 hours a day, but then taking a day or two off in between, a lot. So I'm gonna get this video done and send it out to you so you have something to watch, and I will split this into part 1, part 2, and we will have more of that later at some point, hopefully soon, because I'm gonna start immediately sewing on the waistband because I want this thing done. I want to wear it. It looks like fun and I want it now. So I'm gonna do that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. As always, leave me comments. Let me know how you're doing, what you're working on, what you're listening to, what you're reading, all that kind of stuff. What do you think about my 1790s but make it 1990s dress? Let me know. And I should have the rest of this up for you shortly. This is my hoodie that I wear on regularly, so like not far off. I just think it's really funny that I finally get to wear, like, if only this was flannel. If only this was flannel, I would be so happy, but also probably really hot. So I'm glad it's gauze. Okay, I will see you guys next time with another video, and I hope you guys are having a great day. See you later. Bye, guys.